If you wish, at some point in time, I'm going to be making reference to chapter 23, verse 19 in our Bibles. So if you wish to open up to that page, just to be ready, it's on page 902. If you wish to just trust me on the translation, and in what I'm going to tell you the Torah says, you don't have to open the book at all. I see some of you are trusting, and some of you not so. Okay. Fine, be that way. So, let me ask a question. In raising a child, what are some of the key components, the key elements, the key skills or qualities that a parent must have in order to create the environment for a child to thrive? What would be some of those elements there? What would you suggest? Miriam? Right, the parent has to listen. Very good. I could work on that myself. Yes. Patience is beyond a virtue. Absolutely right. What other qualities should a parent have? Yes. Consistency. Okay. Understanding. Yes. Other qualities. Love. Huh? Okay. Jill. A sense of humor, very useful. Maybe not for the child, but certainly to keep the parent sane. Absolutely right. Yeah, Josh. Boundaries. Okay. Alrighty, so there are a number of different elements that are being raised here of qualities that parents must have in order to create that environment for their child to be able to not just grow, but really thrive. I want to pick up on one of them. Not that all of them are not important. They all are. Particularly love and sense of humor. I like those. But the one that I want to focus on this morning is consistency. Consistency. Now, what do we mean when we say a parent needs to be consistent? And in what way is that important for the child's development? What we mean, I think, is fairly straightforward, which is when your child comes to you and says, "May I have more dessert?" and you say no, being consistent means when that child comes back about 3 seconds later and says, "May I have more dessert?" you should say no. Why? Why should you say no when that child with the big brown eyes looking up at you? They might even throw in a new word like, "please." But they're still making a request, and you're still, if you're being consistent as a parent, going to say no, and I'm going to say that is an absolutely crucial move to make. Why? Why is it so crucial? Gary, what were you saying? Okay, so it shows they cannot manipulate you. And that's important. Why? What does not being able to be manipulated, what does that consistency do for the environment that you create for your child? What does it provide for them? It provides structure and boundaries. And then someone said it over here, comfort zone. By being consistent, we create boundaries, we create parameters, we create structure, and in creating those things, it is comforting. Why is that comforting? Because I know when I was a kid growing up and my parents said no to me, and by the way, that was a word they were fluent in. I said to myself, when I'm a parent, I will never say no to my child the way my parents say no to me. I think every kid has had that. But then you become a parent and you realize that by saying no, by creating structures and boundaries and parameters, you're not actually doing harm to them. You're not quashing them. On the contrary, you create a comfort zone that allows them to grow. Why? Why is that comforting to them? Why is that consistency so important? Yeah. They're not confused, okay? Right. You eliminate confusion so they have some sense of what to expect the next time they come to ask you for something or desire something or want something. And in that understanding of consistency, they can grow because they don't have to be so anxious, worried, and scared about what tomorrow may bring. With this answer, we have now unlocked, I will suggest, one of the more puzzling features of the Torah and its narrative sections and in this week's Torah portion. How so? In this week's Torah portion, we read, as I mentioned at the beginning, that Balak approaches Bilam to curse the Israelites. Bilam approaches God, and God says, no. Really clearly, by the way. Not one of those, oh, let me think, let me see, let me consider. No, God says no. Very clear. And then Balak comes back, putting more pressure on Bilam. And Bilam says, I can only say what God says. And then what does he say? But I'll ask again. Bilam approached God as if God was a bad parent, as if God would change God's mind, as if God was capricious, as if God could not be depended upon and trustworthy. And so what does God do? God does something that on the surface seems very confusing. God says, okay, go. And then what does God do? As I said, God sends the angel of death and is prepared to kill Bilam. Now, on the one hand, we might say, gosh, God looks like God is being inconsistent. To which I would answer, no. What's happening here is God is simply doing something very straightforward. God is teaching Bilam a lesson, which is, you know something? Dealing with someone who changes his or her mind constantly, who can't be depended upon, who can't be trusted, is not a particularly pleasant experience. Because if God was to change God's mind the second time that Bilam goes to him, well then of course, why wouldn't God send an angel of death to potentially kill him? And then why wouldn't God maybe reward Bilam for cursing him? And maybe God, well, you could just play it out. If God were the way Bilam thought God was, the world would be very different. Because Bilam is going on the assumption that God cannot be depended upon, that God cannot be trusted. And the proof that he learns this lesson is in the second of the blessings on page 902 that he offers up. For note what it says. Up, Balak, he says, attend, give ear to the son of Tzipor, referring to himself. God is not a man to be